Alright, so each of you have a paper in front of you that I've given you, and if you could take a moment right now to look it over. Pretend that you are the head of a business and you want to hire a new office administrator. You received many applications, and this is one of them. The man is named John Joyce, and he is applying. So if you would like, so I'm going to ask you a question, and it's very important that everyone answers. If you would like to hire John Joyce as your office administrator based off the information I've given you, please raise your hand. If you would like to hire someone else, please raise your hand. Alright, interesting. So I am here to talk to you all today about the anti-fat bias. And the anti-fat bias is preconceived. The definition of the anti-fat bias is preconceived assumptions of personality characteristics based on the visual assessment of an overweight or an obese person. So what this means is that you look at someone, you visually decide if they're overweight just based off what you think, and then you assume that they are a certain type of person based off your visual assessment of them. So what this often leads to is that people do not like people who are overweight. So as we can see in the class from the results that I just gave you, so let me explain my demonstration. I gave half of you a resume I gave half of you this resume, and then I gave the back half of the room the exact same resume, except it has a picture of a very obese man who is John Joyce. And I made the picture large on purpose because he is large, and I wanted this to be the focal point. So it's interesting you guys responded how you did. So the most common result is that people will be more likely to hire John Joyce without the picture of him, but as soon as they know that he's an overweight individual, they will not want to hire him. There was a study done similar to the one that I just demonstrated for you all, and it was done in 2011, and it's called The Role of Automatic Obesity Stereotypes in Real Hiring Discrimination. Now, what this was is it proved in the study that people are more likely to hire average weight people than they are obese or overweight individuals. Even if the obese or overweight individual is more qualified for the job, the average weight applicant will still be hired. This varies a little bit on what kind of job it is. For example, if it's a job where they're interacting with people a lot, then an obese person is way less likely to get hired. But if it's a job that's more isolated and you don't have to have interaction with other humans, they are a little more likely to get hired, but still less than their average weight counterparts. So it's very interesting that their weight has to do with whether or not they get hired, even if it has nothing to do with their job performance. So as we see the results in this class, I can see that most of you would want to hire John Joyce, and I can't help but think that a lot of you, especially the people in the back, maybe had the reaction of, oh, I don't actually want to hire this man, but I don't want to hire him because but I don't want to say I don't want to hire him because he is obese. That would make me look bad, or I don't actually want to say that out loud, or I don't want to say that out loud in front of this group of people. So instead you answer differently. You know you have this bias against fat people, but you choose to not show it, falsely saying that you would hire them when you probably wouldn't. So you might be wondering, why is this important for you as certified nursing assistant students? And it's because you're going to work with these people, overweight and obese individuals, in almost any healthcare setting you're going to work in. So you will all experience working with these people, and you may experience having a bias against them. So to understand the anti-fat bias, first it's important to understand what explicit and implicit means. So if you have an explicit prejudice, you are aware that you have discriminatory feelings or actions towards obese or overweight people. And for example, that's when you know you don't want to hire them, but you changed your answer because you don't want other people to not know, like the people in the back of the room. That's an example of you having an explicit bias. But there's also the implicit bias, which is when people have ideas and preconceived assumptions about people, but they aren't even aware that they have them. So they can be unconscious and potentially uncontrollable. What this means is that, for example, if I was to hold the door open for more average weight people than I do obese or overweight people, I might not even notice that I'm only holding the door open for average weight people. But in my behavior, I'm still being discriminatory towards the overweight person, even if I'm not aware of it. It's important to make the distinction because if you want to overcome the bias, you need to understand the different types. So I'm going to show some photos, some groups of photos. The first set of photos is right here. And I want you to observe your initial reaction you have towards them. So the first thought in your head when you see these photos, recognize what that is. Okay, so here's the first set of photos. As you can see, it's mostly average weight people and people who are fit. There's even a man eating, but I kind of assume he's average weight if my assumption's correct. And yeah, people generally have more favorable ideas or thoughts in their head towards these photos compared to the next group of photos I'm about to show you. Now you can see here that these are overweight or obese people doing similar activities as the people doing in the photo previously. They're going out for a walk, or they're taking their daughter for a walk, or they're eating as well. The difference in these photos is I'm going to assume that a lot of you have reactions like, that's disgusting, ew, gross, don't show me that. Especially when like a overweight person doesn't have an article of clothing on, if they're like going to the beach, or if they just take their shirt off. People are so quick to think that that's disgusting or ugly to look at, and that they need to cover up because they're too gross to be seen. This is very interesting. There are also characteristics associated with overweight people, such as being lazy, incompetent, low intelligence, unmotivated, unorganized. So usually the word overweight is connected to bad things. So it's connected to bad characteristics. It's important to observe your initial reactions because if you observe these reactions, hopefully you can understand how you feel and then change your actions based off those. So for example, if you saw those photos and your initial reaction was gross, then you probably have a bias against overweight people. And at least you're aware that you have that bias, because now hopefully you can start changing your actions to not demonstrate you are biased and one day just erase the bias completely. If you stop treating overweight people like they are all these bad characteristics, then maybe they will have the chance to prove to you that they aren't lazy, that they actually can be smart. It's also important to observe your initial reactions because it just makes you more aware of what you're doing, and it can help control your implicit discrimination towards overweight people. So, start observing like, oh, I did just hold the door open for an average weight person and another average weight person and never an obese person. So maybe I should start doing that. Slowly changing your actions and becoming aware of what you're doing. It's important to be aware also of what your coworkers will be doing in your potential job. If you notice that someone else has worse care for an overweight person than an average weight person, it's important that you talk to them and say that they're that they're demonstrating discriminatory behavior as well, and this will make you a better CNA, and this will make them a better CNA. So this is why it's important for CNAs to be aware of the anti-fat bias. You are going to work with obese and overweight people so often that you cannot have a bias against them. You cannot let it affect their care. A lot of you might think that, oh, I'm not biased, as CNAs we can't be, but that's just not true. You're people too when you experience the bias as well. In a study in 2001 called the Implicit Anti-Fat Bias among Health Professionals, the results were that although there is a slight decrease compared to the general population, healthcare workers of all education levels show both implicit and explicit stereotypes against overweight people. Oh, this kind of worries the general population because they think, oh, healthcare professionals can't be unbiased. How am I supposed to be? but that's just not true at all. It's all about being aware and being very conscious of your actions, your feelings, and your judgments about people, and just how you take those feelings and judgments and turn them into actions. So I have the utmost confidence that if you all are aware of yourselves and aware that stereotypes do exist, that you will be able to apply this to your work as a CNA, and you will be able to provide adequate and good care for all of your patients. Thank you.